Welcome to In Such a Time, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. Each week, Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Londy explore the moments, questions, and ideas that shape who we are and who we aspire to be. And now for this week's conversation.
Welcome back to In Such a Time, conversations on Jewish life, leadership, and meaning. I'm your co-host, Rabbi Londy, alongside Rabbi Jaffe, and today we're going to be talking about Kashrut, dietary laws of Judaism. And I'm curious, this is something that I think in our Jewish life, we're always like talking about, like, is that kosher, or is it kosher-esque, or is it kosher style? And what does the word kashrut mean to you, being kosher, and where does it hit you in your life?
Sure. Well, happy to be back with you. So kashrut has been an evolution for me. As we've discussed, I grew up in a very, very not kosher environment. I think if you were going to pick a place to not be kosher, then Hawaii is probably your ideal place in which Kahlua pork and spam musubi and
Goodness gracious.
and shellfish and raw octopus are on the menu, and scraping opihi, which are little crustaceans off of rocks and sucking out the animal inside. There's a pretty normal thing to do as a kid growing up around the beaches of Hawaii. And so I came from a very non-kosher place. I think I've shared with you that I once went to a bat mitzvah for an interfaith family in which there was a full roast Kahlua pig on the entrance to the bat mitzvah party, which was something I'd never seen before or again. Later on in high school, I started experimenting with different diets, and eventually, through a sports coach of mine, decided that I was going to become vegan. I was a very thoughtless, unhealthy vegan for 2 years. Vegan does not preclude you from eating sugar and carbs, which is pretty much all I ate. So take the food pyramid, turn it upside down, and that was pretty much me around that period. So Mentos and French fries do not make for a ethical or a healthy diet, shall we say. I then decided to go vegetarian, and then from there I added in the fish, and then I added back in the chicken. And then I stopped. And I think we all draw arbitrary lines for ourselves. And for me, my arbitrary line was mammals, was I'm not going to eat something that cares for its young. That's part ethics and part there's a lot of, if you cut out meat and especially mammals out of your diet, it makes kashrut a whole lot easier. Um, and so that's where I've eventually rested, although I'm a huge hypocrite because over the past 2 weeks, I've killed so many mice living beneath my house
I
that
hope you didn't eat them.
but no, but I can't really say that my morals are based upon not wanting to kill mammals because I've killed a lot of mammals over the past 2 weeks.
That's a lot. That's a lot to take in at
I
once.
have not roasted or eaten one.
Okay, good.
So that's a good thing. How about you
Um,
with that?
I have not eaten mice nor octopus.
Never?
No.
No?
So I grew up vegetarian and I'm
Hmm.
still vegetarian, and being kosher was always a central part of my life. My parents made the decision that we were living in Orlando, Florida, and there wasn't really a lot of access to meat, to
Hmm.
kosher meat. Um, and they were also on the line about being vegetarian in general. And so our house was a dairy house. It was a vegetarian house, pescatarian. And being kosher was always really important for my family growing up. I've actually held on to that. I've stayed kosher my entire life. I'm proud of being kosher. I'm proud of the choices that I make in terms of how I opt into making decisions about kosher food and kosher options. There are very clear laws of kashrut, and then there's how you deal with it from a modern perspective. And I'm sure that I make choices about the way that I eat kosher that other people wouldn't. And kashrut is a journey, as you said. So my house now is actually still dairy because even though I consider myself kosher, I don't think it would be easy for me to keep a meat dairy home because that's not something that I have experience with. So that's where I'm at in my kashrut journey at the moment. Um, and maybe we'll talk about like where it came from and what the purpose served and serves in the Jewish tradition.
Sure, sure. In my reading of the text, the Torah doesn't, it's not the Torah's business to go into the rationale behind kashrut. There are laws of kashrut, but it doesn't say too much about what this is actually intended for. That's really left to our commentaries. The basic laws of kashrut, for those who are listening who may not be knowledgeable about this, is that for mammals, that anything with a cleft hoof and anything that chews its cud, those two things are necessary in order for something to be kosher. For a bird, basically a bird of prey is not kosher,
Right.
and birds that are not birds of prey, so like you can eat a pigeon and enjoy. I have not.
Domesticated.
I've never eaten a mouse or a pigeon. Just so you know.
Good.
Aren't all pigeons domesticated by now? Aren't they all just eating breadcrumbs and
That's what I'm
they're
saying. A bird has to
yeah.
be able to be domesticated in order for it to be
There
kosher.
you go. Thank you. And for fish, it has to have gills and scales in order to be kosher as well. So those are the basic rules of the game here. Um, you can go back and forth on a lot of the rationale behind these things, and we can talk about this. Some of our commentators are quite creative, but at the end of the day, in my reading, kashrut, like many laws in Judaism, are really about creating a cohesive fence around Jews and making it so that we are separate from the rest of the world, and that by keeping laws of kashrut, it means that Jews have to eat together and Jews live together and Jews have to live near a kosher butcher and have to have those Jewish resources around them, and that it creates an incredibly deeply connected community with one another. That through the laws of eating, every time you sit down for a meal, it's a time to connect with your community. And I'd say one more thing than that, you know, this is my rant against spirituality overall, and the idea of like spirituality means no, if someone says I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. I
Mm.
leave behind society in order to find God on top of a mountain. And Judaism says no, that God is found in our everyday interactions with other people, that you don't leave life in order to find God, you live life. And that if you live a kosher life, that means that every time you put something in your mouth, you have to think about it in terms of with a Jewish lens. Is this something that I, as a Jew, do? And when you offer the correct blessing for it, whether before and after, and the setting in which you're sitting, each one of those are connection points to your Jewish identity. And so it also just, it's so greatly raises the touch points of Judaism in your everyday decisions, that in keeping kosher, Judaism is always at the top of your mind or on the top of your tongue.
I like that last point.
Thank you.
Uh, it's that I agree with you. I think it's about creating connectivity and not necessarily interacting outside of the Jewish community. And there's many different Jews from various parts of the world had different ways of observing kashrut. There's Jews, like more Ashkenazi Jews probably wouldn't have interacted with non-Jews to get any of their produce or any of the things that they needed, whereas Sephardic Jews probably did, and that's indicative of the relationship with the outside communities. One of the things that I think is really interesting about kashrut is even though it's the way that we observe kashrut today is through the rabbinic lens. It's one of these things that we do that we don't always understand why we do them in Judaism. Like there's a few rules that we observe them and we give meaning to them later on, and it's not necessarily clear as to why we do that. It's this and shatnez, um, which is wool cannot be mixed with linen, and that's another rule that we just accept as a rule of God. And so kashrut's one of these things that in order to show our commitment to being God's creatures, we say, okay, these are the rules that are given to us, and we abide by them, and we try to find meaning in them, um, and we live our lives uh, according to this rhythm of keeping kosher. Um, I understand that it is not so easy to be a modern human being in a world full of not necessarily kosher options and to opt into kashrut. And I think one of the interesting decisions that we've made in our community as of late is that we have opted into making it a more kosher facility, a more kosher environment. I think one of the reasons that we did that is because we don't want to be afraid of being Jewish in the way that is authentic to us, in the way that is outwardly presenting as Jewish. We want to say like this is what the Jewish tradition provides for us, and we want to lean into it. And so it's interesting for me, would a movement opt out of being kosher to start with? Why would the reform movement, why would that even be a thing, that there are non-kosher synagogues to start with?
Sure. I mean, I think here you have to look at the foundations of Reform Judaism, and I think an era, again, I often use the word High Church Judaism in a
Right.
way that we've swayed from heavily, but in those early times of Reform Judaism, there is a basic separation between rational and non-rational mitzvot. Rational ones being things I can make sense of: don't kill, don't steal, don't murder. And then there are the non-rational ones, the things that we do just because the Torah or because God tells us to, but not because, as you're saying, there's any explanation, like shot nets, like the mixing of fabrics. And that top on the list of early reformers was, I think it was Abraham Geiger who called
Yeah.
it kitchen Judaism. And kitchen Judaism, why this is something that is archaic, of a time period in which people were seeking to separate themselves, but now living in a inclusive, modern, cosmopolitan world, we no longer need these things. Read the original Pittsburgh Platform from 1885. It has all this in it. And this basic denigration of kitchen Judaism, or of those forms of Judaism which do not abide by moral rationalistic standards. That, by the way, goes incredibly 100% against sort of the Hasidic viewpoint. I may have shared this with you before, this anecdote that my Chabad friend once said to me. He said, if I walk down the street and I don't kill or murder or steal the person from this person across from me, doesn't mean I'm in relationship or covenant with them. Just means that I'm not a crazy person. I'm not deranged. But when my wife wakes up in the middle of the night and tells me she needs a cup of tea, he's British, so the cup of tea comes in. It makes no sense to me why a human being should need a cup of tea at 1 in the morning, but I'm in covenant with her. And the sign of covenant is not doing the things that make sense to you. The sign of covenant is doing the things that all the more so, or dafka, don't make sense to you. And so that's sort of the Hasidic take versus Reform take on these non-rationalistic mitzvot. And I think that we as a reform movement have been crawling back from that 1885 platform to recapture more of that Hasidic love of the non-rational mitzvah, or perhaps even understanding the meaning of non-rational mitzvot, even if it means just communal cohesion and separation, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
There's nothing that I love more, and I know that you and I are pretty aligned on this, than going into a kosher supermarket. There are many in our area we're quite fortunate to have Evergreen and to have Seasons and to have Bingo, which is
Maroons,
maroons,
yes.
all of them. And going into these settings, you go in there and you know that people are there to buy kosher food because they specifically want to have that experience.
Mhm.
They specifically want to feel connected to their Judaism, connected to the Jewish community, connected to others who care about being kosher. And even though the prices are jacked way up, often, except for our own, which is pretty
Pretty good.
reasonable,
Pretty good.
you you go in there like with a sense of, it gives me such joy to just experience that and know that other people are doing this thing um in order to observe a mitzvah, in order to just observe like the authentic version of who they are, and to be in connection with God and with our tradition. Um, I was recently in Bingo and I needed to get hot dogs. I am vegetarian, but I was buying kosher hot dogs for someone else, and I had to go behind a minion
Yes.
that was happening in the kosher hot dog section. And I just loved that I was witnessing all of that. Like these people who were davening, who were praying at this time of day on the Jewish time, and me getting these kosher hot dogs because it was important for the people that I was with that they have kosher hot dogs. Um, and it's just so sweet. brings me so much joy to be Jewish. And I remember I once went in with my son to that same supermarket at Bingo, and he walks in, he looks around, he goes, like very out loud, "Is everybody here Jewish?" It's
It's amazing.
amazing. So it's not, we don't just observe kashrut for the sake of making ourselves feel good. That's not why I do anything in Judaism. I feel a sense of commitment
Yeah.
to our tradition and covenant. And I don't know if it's with God or with other people or with myself, or with our history, but I'm so proud that our community, going back to the decision that we've made here, that our community has opted into not a strictly kosher kitchen, but a more kosher kitchen.
I want to share a story with you that very much aligns with what you're saying. Yesterday, I was in the most spiritual of all places. Sammy and I went to the American Dream Mall.
Oh my goodness.
And I was thinking about this. I knew we were talking about this coming up. In the American Dream Mall, there's really three eating settings.
Yes.
The first eating setting is the main food court. And the main food court is sort of a mishmash mixture of anyone who's there. There's the Filipino Jollibee over there. There is Wendy's and Popeyes. There's a ramen place there. There is a Peruvian place there. But kind of anyone just sitting together eating. That's setting number
Yeah.
one. Setting number two is the H Mart food hall downstairs. Again, another place close to my heart, although it's very tough with Kashrut, which has about 10 different restaurants in there. And if you walk around, as I did, it's almost entirely Asian families sitting together, eating family style, very much different Asian traditional foods. Great.
Yeah.
What's the third one? You go back to that food court on the third floor,
In the corner.
and just around, it's grown. There are 5 restaurants now, all together who are all kosher. And there's a seating area there, and they are 100% Jews eating there. I'd say 90% of them Orthodox black hat wearing Jews.
Yeah.
All the Jews are there together. There's a fish grill opened up there too, which, by the way, if you've ever been to Los Angeles, there used to be a place on Beverly called Fish Grill, which was a kosher fish place that had cassette tapes of teachings by the Rebbe that you could borrow and play in your car and then return when you come back to Fish Grill
I've missed that.
another time. And I'm thinking about kashrut in terms of communal cohesion. There is an area, I mean, so much of the American Dream Mall is so kosher. I mean, the Dunkin' Donuts there has a hechsher on it.
The
And
Toys R Us
the
has
Toys R Us has
kosher ice cream.
Halab Yisrael, like really kosher ice cream,
No.
which is amazing. The only Wetzel's Pretzels that has a hechsher in the world is at the American Dream Mall. They have a sign saying so there. But when you go there, if you are an observant Jew, you go there and you're going to be around other observant Jews. And that's just such a microcosm of the binding nature of kashrut. And I have a question to follow up with you on that, unless anything else you want to say about that.
I just have one American Dream Mall anecdote.
Please.
I once cared so much about eating kosher, especially kosher for Passover, which is something that I've been very serious about during my life. I decided, because I was insane, I decided to take my kids to the American Dream Mall on Passover to have kosher for Passover food. And I was like, it's going to be fine. And I take them there.
Closed, right?
No, it was during Chol Hamoed, during the middle days. I take them there. I was like, I'm not going to have an anxiety attack being there. We get there. The lines are longer than there's more people than I've ever seen. A tiny pizza was like $25 for like a slice. And I'm just like trying to smile, like show my kids, like, this is important, we're here. But like secretly, I'm like, I hate myself. And why have I done this? And then after we ate a lot of fried food, we went ice skating with only Jews.
Of course.
And yeah, I felt all the parts of community. I felt the love of community, and like, I will never do that to myself again. So yes, what's your question?
So when I think about keeping kosher, I think about that if and when I live in Israel, keeping kosher is going to be so easy. If and when I live in Israel, like in the future, whenever I do, I know it that I will fully keep kosher, because there's such an array of kosher options, not for the restaurants, for the grocery stores. It's not difficult, and it's not as though you say, well, keeping kosher means I'll never eat Thai food again. Keeping kosher means I'll never eat Japanese food again. Like, they have kosher versions of them. maybe I'm making this too idyllic, so please burst my bubble all you want. What was it like keeping kosher? First of all, please judge what I just said. And second of all, how would you compare keeping kosher in Israel versus keeping kosher in the diaspora?
So not everything in Israel is kosher.
Not everything.
No, really not everything. And also not keeping kosher is a statement. Like in Tel Aviv, there's a very strong secular movement and anti-religious movement because religion in Israel is is synonymous with the rabbanut, with the rabbinate who is
Ultra-Orthodox.
ultra Orthodox, and um it's maintained by the government, and people, there is no separation of religion and state. And so that's deeply troubling for people. And so instead of like having a normal version of Judaism, everything's kind of politicized.
Yes.
And so a lot of the food that I would eat would be specifically not from kosher restaurants, because a lot of the times the kosher restaurants have to make really gross deals in order to get their kashrut stamp. And so there's variations. There's different variations of kashrut. There's kashrut that's like modern Orthodox kashrut, and there's kashrut like
There's like an ethical
ethical
kashrut.
kashrut. And so I made a lot of food choices that were around being kosher, but they weren't always, a lot of the times the people that I'd be with, like even if they were modern Orthodox, they would prefer the non-kosher option. If it was parve, if it was like a non-meat restaurant, because they knew that it would probably be a more ethical place to eat.
But it's not like you were eating pork and shellfish at those restaurants.
However, the only time that I ever accidentally ate non-kosher was in Israel. Um, I once I assumed that at a restaurant I ordered fish and chips that it would be a kosher fish. It was catfish, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was catfish offering in Israel. Why would there be?
Yeah.
So that was a surprise. And also I remember going to, this was actually, I loved this, and I've thought about it a lot since. I went to a restaurant in Zichron Yaakov on Passover, and some restaurants become kosher for Passover. Also, there's like no matzah in Israel on Passover. Everything is like everything is Passover bread. They make bread out of like tapioca and potato, and it's like there's not a lot of matzah options. And I went to a restaurant that wasn't explicitly kosher for Passover, which was something I was trying at the time. I've taken steps back since. And they go, "Do you want?" I ordered an Israeli breakfast, and they go, "Do you want bread or matzah?" And I just thought that was so bizarre.
Yeah.
That this institution, like they were trying to be thoughtful.
Right.
They had shrimp on their menu, but you could get the shrimp with bread or with matzah because so everyone's doing their calculations. And I love that conversation exists. I love that conversation. I did not eat shrimp, but I love I love that everyone is thinking about kashrut, and I love that exists. So I'm not saying that you wouldn't keep kosher. I'm sure that you would. I'm sure that you would keep a very real semblance of kashrut. But it changes when you're there because keeping kosher means different things to different people.
Right.
There was one institution that I really, really did love when I lived there. And it was this one restaurant that was totally kosher, not by the rabbinate, that was open on Shabbat. And you can't be a kosher restaurant if you're open on Shabbat in Israel. And you would either pre-order your food, or you would get there and there would be non-Jewish servers who would take your order, and all the food was pre-made before Shabbat.
Yes.
And you would order it, called the karusela, and you would have your Shabbat lunch at a restaurant that is not given the rabbinic supervision, but a lot of like modern Orthodox people would eat there on Shabbat.
Right.
And so we don't really have those discussions here in the diaspora. I think that when you live in a place that's Jewish, like it breathes Judaism, it bleeds Judaism, then you're having different conversations because kashrut is used also, it's weaponized in some ways. We're not having that here. Here we're opting into it or we're opting out of it. And it always really excites me when people in our community, and there's no judgment either way, but when people say, like, can we have a kosher event? Or what do you think about having a kosher event? And I always like say, why do you want that? And they go, because this is we're marking a Jewish occasion, and we want to do it in a way that feels like we're going back to our roots.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, we're speaking both about kashrut, but in purely halakhic terms, I think it's fair to say that neither of us keep a strict halakhically kosher lifestyle. That is, in terms of eating at restaurants that don't have a hechsher. I know you keep a kosher home, but I don't know to what degree you kosher your home for Pesach and go through all of
Oh,
those
I
steps.
do.
And all of you put like
Everything goes away. Everything's
how
covered.
about the cover top, the countertops are covered,
Everything.
everything.
We went with the new halacha this year that like you can, if you have a certain kind of countertop, then you can pour boiling water on.
There's a porous one versus a
Yeah. So
non-porous
yeah,
one.
I do go there.
But talk to me about eating out at restaurants and how do you, just like how I made an arbitrary decision about mammals were going to be the ending point for me, every decision is made. Even there's so many levels and so many different communities within Orthodoxy that there's always going to be someone who feels like they're more observant than you are, right? So ultimately, it's always some form of arbitrary decision. How did you come to a decision about eating at non-kosher restaurants, for example?
When I was in youth group, they would I was in USY, the conservative movement's youth group, and they would give us explicit instructions as to what we could eat when we were outside of the space. Like we were in the city or if we were on a trip. And they would say, first it was you could eat cold dairy, something
Cold
you could
dairy is such a Jewish term. I think a lot of Reform Jews aren't as familiar with that.
like you can have
But
a salad
yes,
that's been prepared on a cold, like on it's all cold ingredients that have not been cooked.
right. And why is cold dairy more easier to deal with than hot
Because
dairy?
nothing has like seeped into it.
Right,
You're not accidentally having bacon, you're not
right.
having like a non-kosher cheese.
But only certain Jews would understand the term. Oh, what's today's lunch? Oh, it's cold
It's cold
dairy,
dairy.
and just know that that's a thing.
Right. So cold dairy, or there was like one McDonald's where we could order the French fries because it was only made that only the French fries were made in that
No beef tallow.
no, like
Yeah,
so it was checked. We could have the French fries at McDonald's or a milkshake because it was only made
yeah,
in that oil, in French fry oil. So that was even more stringent than I was. I grew up eating hot dairy at restaurants. That's how I grew up, and I just assume like that's the gold standard. I've gone through different versions of what I eat out in restaurants and what I don't eat. Um, I'll go to a diner and I'll get an omelet. And you know what? It never feels good to me because there's always like a little smell of bacon on the eggs.
Mm.
And and then I have to have that conversation with myself. Okay. Like, is this actually a kosher decision? Does this feel good to eat it?
Right.
Are you going to stop making those decisions? Because then that limits you. And so yeah, they are arbitrary decisions, and I go back and forth on how I eat and where I eat and what feels right. Um, I think that now that I have kids, I opt into places where I know that they can eat, like that
Yeah,
they're gonna have something to eat because they're picky.
yeah,
It's very hard that there's chicken fingers on the menu because they always want them, and
yes.
unless it's a kosher restaurant, I'm not gonna give it to them.
Chicky's restaurant at the American Dream Mall is all for you.
I
Their
know,
specialty.
I know, I know.
Do you remember growing up that in Jerusalem, that used to be that on Ben Yehuda Street, there was the non-kosher, no, sorry, there was the kosher McDonald's was on Ben Yehuda Street,
Yeah.
but one block behind it on Hillel Street was the non-kosher
Mm.
McDonald's. Later, the kosher McDonald's turned into a Burger King,
Right.
right?
And then
But
Burger King went out of business in Israel.
I remember my camper ma friends who are more observant going to Israel with them and them like having their first ever Big Mac and thinking it was a huge day for them. Like some Jews run to the Kotel while in Jerusalem, they ran to McDonald's to have their first Big Mac. It
Can
was like a
you
thing.
know, I want to speak to that for a second. I think it's so much about being kosher for me is that you can't have everything you want all the time. Life
Hmm.
has boundaries,
Yeah.
and
It teaches humility that way.
it teaches humility, it teaches boundaries, it teaches life is not about getting what you want when you
Right.
want it.
Right.
And I live my life according to a certain framework, and I'm going to adapt myself for that framework and not adapt the world to my needs and wants at this very moment. And
Hmm.
it's really a meditation in a little bit of um, just being able to not give into every indulgence and have real um have real limits with myself. And I think that that's the case with a lot of the mitzvot. It's not always about, it's not, it, life, being Jewish is not just like what makes me feel good to be a Jew? It's how does this Jewish life teach me to be a person with savlanut, with
Patience.
patience, thank you, and with a sense of humility, as you said, towards the world.
Right.
Right. And
It's
so
not all about me.
it's not all about me. And, going back to the chicken nugget thing for a moment, my kids are vegetarian unless we're in a kosher setting, and I'll let them have um, chicken nuggets, which two of my kids are really into. And we were in a setting where all the kids were eating chicken nuggets. It was a non-kosher setting. And I said, you can't have it. And they were freaking out. And I almost gave into it.
Right.
And then I said, it's not always easy to be Jewish. It's not always easy to want something and to not be able to get it. And I don't know if that resonated with my 7-year-old who was like, I want chicken nuggets now. But I also think it was a lesson in sometimes, we make decisions in life, um, and we hope that it will pay off later on.
Right. If we want to be part of a community, we have to be willing to get over ourselves and to agree to compromise with those communities' rules.
Right.
And that teaches us about that, again, the world doesn't revolve around us. We're here to be part of a community, not for the community to suit us. Which I think goes back to our discussion around our own synagogue, to what degree we need to suit everyone's dietary wants, or can we take a stand and say, these are the values, the morals of our synagogue, and we feel as though having a at least kosher style offering when we come together, that's important. It makes me think that when we keep kosher, it also connects me more to the type of life that our ancestors likely lived. That is, that number one, that if you read from the Torah's perspective, first of all, people aren't going out to restaurants. Our ancestors ate at home and largely prepared their own food. And that even to this day, you may disagree with me on this one a bit, but even in Israel, people do not go out to dinner in Israel the way that they go out to dinner here. You think so?
Unless you're in a city, and then they're going out all the time.
My family in Israel does not go off to restaurants
they don't
very
live in
often.
Tel Aviv or Jerusalem.
True. Very good. The second thing is the biblical diet is primarily a vegetarian diet, that you're not eating meat all of the time, that meat is a special celebratory food. Maybe if you're a shepherd and that's your main thing that you lived on, but for all of the pain it takes to kill the animal ethically, to kosher it, let's say you don't have your butcher in town, that you had to actually do this in biblical times, that reading through the Bible's account, the Torah's account, it seems as though that perhaps the only time people ever really ate meat was when they were going to the temple to offer a sacrifice or such, and that the amount of preparation and laws around eating meat, and because there's no refrigeration, etc., all of that, it really meant that it was a special occasion, and that most of our lives are lived as vegetarians, and that the older I get, like kind of the less of like bulking up on protein I need to go, although these days everyone's proteined out all the time, that it's like you realize as you age that the vegetarian diet really has much more to offer you, that's really much more in balance with your life. So for me, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but I see it also, it connects me to a sense of, if I was living 3,000 years ago, like, I guess this would kind of be more like what my diet and what my life would be like.
I can't speak to that. I don't know. And I like that imagination. Like I
Yeah.
like that imagery. Um, when I think about kashrut, um, I'm also thinking about, it's reminding us of life. And when I remember in fourth grade, we had to mummify a chicken. Um,
You don't just get an owl pellet and put together the bones from
no,
that?
that was
That's like the
that was
basic?
younger. That was
Or a frog eyeball or whatever we used to do.
No, it was either fourth grade or sixth grade. We had to mummify a chicken. We got Empire chicken, and it was a Jewish school. Make us our coffee. It was weeks and weeks and
Wait,
weeks.
you gotta, even the chicken you mummified had to be kosher.
Yeah,
But
it was a Jewish school.
and yet the mummification process is not
Okay,
kosher.
listen, we had to, well, we actually learned about kashrut because we had to drain all the blood. And we
What grade is this?
it was fourth or sixth grade. I don't remember. Wait,
My
wait.
fourth grade self would have been uncontrollable during this
I know
process.
you would
Go
have been
on.
kicked out.
Kicked out for sure. Go on.
It was a history and science lesson.
Did you suck out the blood yourself, or did you?
Listen, you're not you're gonna hear the story if you wait. And so no, we didn't suck out the blood. We had to drain it from with salt. We were also learning about kashrut because when you eat, we learned that you can't have any blood in your meat. See, now you feel silly because it was I made a good point.
And because I was projecting a blood libel on the Jews, that too, sucking out the blood. Go on.
I hate all this. No, I'm kidding. And so we had to remove the blood from the chicken.
Yeah.
And we actually learned like about the sanctity of life. Like whenever there was a sacrifice made in the temple, the blood needed to be drained from it because in order for the meat to be eaten, all life had to be taken out of it.
Yes.
Because you cannot mix life and death.
Mhm.
There can't be a question if you mix life and death. And so when you're eating kosher meat, it's also a reminder of the preservation of life. You're being thoughtful about the fact that this dead thing that you are eating had life and you needed to drain the life out in order to be thankful and aware and in full of intent that this animal gave something to you. You know, it's my I have a close relationship with some people in a Native American community.
Mm.
And when they talk about the way that they prepare food, when they prepare meat, I think that sometimes the way that people who keep kosher think that that's what kashrut is about, that we're thankful for each part of the animal and for the life that it gave us. And I think that there is ultimately some of that there. But I think that when you're intentional about anything that you eat, it makes you more aware of what has been given for you to have that sustenance. And that's humbling for me. That's beautiful for me.
Yeah.
And maybe that mummifying the chicken was maybe that was a trauma that I had to bring up right now. It was really, I remember it smelled so bad,
Mhm.
the mummification process.
Mhm.
Okay, but I'm gonna go on from that.
No, I absolutely, I agree with you 100%. And this is really this idea of, Judaism, a lot of it is about creating boundaries, and those boundaries have to do with if the sacred, if Kiddusha is defined as that which is separate or different from the other, that the 6 days of the week are one, and then there's the day, the holy day of Shabbat, and then there is the idea of a separation as well between life, which is sacred, and death, which is profane, and creating those borders between the two of them. And each time that we eat, we have to think about this, and we have to divide between the sacred and the profane, like that. That again, it creates it. It just again and again touches on, repeats this worldview and this theology, which I think is so important. I want to ask you a question. I know we're getting towards the end here, but maybe for our listeners here, we could talk about one or two suggestions of favorite kosher restaurants or places to eat around here, and favorite grocery stores that we go to find all the best kosher items. So, I'm putting you on the spot. You can go first. I can go first. How can I help you?
Um, who? So I'll go. I love a good kosher supermarket.
Mhm.
I really, really love Bingo, which is in Spring Valley. That is a whole world, an entire experience, and I love our owns in Queens. I think I like that more.
A little further though.
It's further, but it's so good and it always has everything I want and need. And restaurants. I'm thinking for a moment. I really think that if you haven't been to Grill Point in Queens, or there's also one on the Upper East Side now, that's a good place. I don't eat shawarma, but that's a really good place to get some good Israeli food. It's kosher. You're always going to hear a fun conversation there. So that's really delicious and not overly fancy. And I'm thinking for a moment, if I've been to any other really good kosher. Oh, you know what's opening in the city?
What's opening in the city?
Motek.
But Motek, I don't think that's strictly kosher.
I think it
It's
is
at the
in
and the
Florida. It's kosher.
the Flatiron one's open already.
Oh, it's not kosher.
No, but I was saying there's three locations that are opening altogether. The Flatiron one's open.
Yeah.
The Broadway District one is about to open, and there's an Upper West Side one that's going to open.
I'll tell you a kosher place that is really delicious. Malka,
Mm-hmm.
that is an Eyal Shani restaurant. Oh my God.
And where's that?
Amazing. That is Upper West Side-ish.
Okay.
Definitely worth going to.
So it sounds like outside of Manhattan, we're really focusing on either sort of the Spring Valley, Muncie area or the Kew Gardens, Queen area. Those are like our two big. Then,
I
of
think
course,
so.
once you head up to like the Five Towns and Lawrence and all of that,
Right.
there's a zillion options over there as well. So I'll echo your grocery store ones. I will say on the. I wish I had the names for all of these, but on that little strip on Main Street in Kew Gardens, right by Jewel, where the
Yeah.
Seasons is. There's this little macolet, a little that has, I mean, everything you can't find in our owns, they have there. It's like this,
Right.
it's very like authentic. Macolet is like a bodega
Yeah.
in Hebrew. And right next to that is Naomi's kosher falafel and pizza and sabich, and it's like a hole in the wall, and it's good for all of those.
The pizza's not great, but the
The
falafel is
sabich,
amazing.
yes, and the
The sabich
falafel,
is amazing.
very good. Grill Point, I'm right there with you on that. If you go to Bingo, there is King of Shawarma
Right.
next door now, which has legit, and you can order in English, Hebrew, or Yiddish, which is pretty amazing just to hear people doing the three of them there. And now they opened up a milk a dairy dessert place at the end of that strip, like a coffee dessert bar that is
Okay.
fully kosher. But I want to give a shout out here for a second to our friend and colleague Rabbi Adam Baldachin,
Yeah.
who is the mashgiach, who's the kosher check enforcer for the Indian vegetarian restaurant in Hartsdale, right by the Hartsdale train
Right.
station. I wish I remember the name of it because my wife and I do like to go there, and it's
Something 44?
you'll know better than me,
Yeah.
but it's a fully vegetarian, if not vegan.
I think so,
I
yeah.
think maybe vegetarian. I'm not sure. Indian restaurant here in Hartsdale, which does have a kosher certificate, which is pretty amazing to see. And so there's plenty of kosher options to go check out.
I have one more.
Okay, I won't. You go. Then I go. Go
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. If you're looking for a good bakery,
Yeah.
the White Plains Bake Shop is kosher,
Mhm.
and you're always going to find a great challah, really good dessert there,
Yeah.
parve and dairy alike. Love it.
If you go to Evergreen
Mm.
in Muncie, across the street, there's a strip mall. In the strip mall, there is a bookstore which has a sofer stam on site. Someone, if you need your tefillin
Yeah.
fixed or such, who can sit there and by hand do all of things, or can write the cloth for your mezuzah on hand. Pretty amazing just to do that. And next to that, there is a meat restaurant. I wish I remember the name. The Jerusalem Grill. There, like they have like everything there from like a real meat restaurant in Jerusalem as well. And that place, I had like the Yemenite soup there when I was there last time, and that place is pretty good. So maybe we have to do a Temple Bethel
Kosher crawl.
a kosher crawl, one to Spring Valley / Muncie, one to Kew Gardens, and to just show people all of the good stuff to eat.
Do you know what's really exciting about the kosher scene these days? That every kosher restaurant used to have kosher sushi, which was like
It's a joke. It's a steak restaurant plus sushi, all of
Yes.
them, because they said, why not if we're making the food for the kosher people?
And I think that we're at a point where that's not the case anymore, where they don't always have sushi on the menu.
Baruch Hashem.
Nice discussing this topic with you. And if anyone has questions and wants to further talk about what it means to be kosher, then we are really happy to discuss.
And is your service, your hashgacha service, is it continuing? I know you've done this at some restaurants locally. Are you taking a break from that?
Until the next place asks me, I've done that. I've done kosher supervision. It's pretty interesting. And
So
wonderful.
your fourth grade project actually turned out well for you.
My fourth grade project has really paid off.
And now probably many of our listeners don't even know that when something is called kosher salt, it's not that the salt is kosher itself. It's that by having the larger chunks of salt, that's what you need to kosher the animal and soak the
Yes,
blood out
soak it
without
out.
the fine salt going up into the animal.
Exactly.
And now they know what their kosher salt is from.
Now we know. The more
Okay.
we know.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining us on In Such a Time. Make sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. To learn more about Rabbis Jonathan Jaffe and Leora Londy, or to connect with Temple Bethel of Northern Westchester, visit bethelnw.org, or follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Temple Bethel NW. Thanks for listening.